Suni, you just bought an 8-unit property, which now brings your total up to 22 units. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
This 8-unit that you bought it at the end of January 31st, 2025.
2025, yes. I forgot what year it was.
So what's notable to me about that is that a lot of people have said, you can't buy property in 2025 anymore. It's prohibitively expensive.
False. I would say that is a hard false. Rates have gone up. It's been a little bit more challenging to navigate, but honestly, this is in the last 8 years of investing, this is one of the times that I am the most sad that I don't have access to more capital to buy as much as I possibly can. Because even though rates are higher than they were in previous years, the markets that I know and the markets that I've seen through my network, there have been more opportunities with people selling, and the prices are finally starting to soften a little bit to reflect the rates and the challenges that people have had with buying. And not only that, I think people are a little bit more influenced by sentiment and emotion than the actual numbers. Because there's so much going on in the economy, there's so many unknowns, I think that people are just a little bit more fearful, which is also impacting prices. And just as importantly, competition. Because before, when times felt good, the initial price of a property that came on market might have been a little bit different from what it is now. But once all the competitors got in and started bidding on it, that would definitely drive up prices every single time. And so I think those bidding wars have softened, which actually can allow people and newer investors to get in at a more favorable price point than in the past.
That's interesting. Okay, so there's a lot in there that I want to dig into. Let's start with the competition angle, because I think that's a really important piece that a lot of beginners don't understand. Oftentimes, as a beginner, what you'll see is the sticker price, the asking price for a home. And what you don't see as a beginner are all of the concessions that are made in closing costs, in repairs, in like, can you, and especially for beginners who might not be experienced with this, can you talk about all of the various concessions that often get made in the closing process that can dramatically decrease the cost of a home relative to the sticker price, like, you know, what it closes at for the purpose of comps versus what it actually costs the buyer? Yeah.
And I think so. I think I would actually like to discuss this in two parts, if that's okay. One is in terms of the concessions, but then so that the overall price would be lower. But then I think the other piece is the price might be higher when you actually end up closing on it during times of competition. So first part, to address your question, the way I like to look at it is every line item in a closing statement is negotiable. So it doesn't matter whether it's the title fee, especially if you have a connection with the title company or can build a relationship with them, maybe through another investor who's a friend, you know, who can recommend you, or whatever other item it is, the insurance, etc. All of those pieces are negotiable, either with the vendor who you are working with, or having the seller cover it if you know you're coming in with a strong price up front, with a strong offer that they've accepted. And also, if there's a lot of deferred maintenance on the property, that's going to scare a lot of other folks away, which could put you in a stronger position if you're able to get that property under contract.
And what is deferred maintenance for
Right.
For
so
a beginner?
Deferred maintenance is basically just repairs that haven't been completed, probably on a schedule that they should have been completed. And so then things are left to be, they might look a little more derelict. There might be leaks, et cetera, which could lead to big repairs down the road. You know, it just means that the person who owned the property probably did not take care of it like they should have.
Right. Like old windows.
Yes.
You know, old flooring.
Yes.
Stuff like that, old roof.
Even easier and cheaper cosmetic things like not painting it can really make a difference, both to a tenant who's moving in or someone who's looking at the property from the outside.
Right. Right. Okay, so continue. You were talking
Yes,
about...
and so then part two, right? So I'd like to illustrate this with the example of a property I purchased, I would say maybe 2023, and so rates had started to increase, but they weren't quite where they are now. And so it was a duplex that I was buying, and it ended up, I think it went on market like 180, which is a great price point for my area. Fantastic price point. By the time I closed, it was 235. And I had to go in as a cash buyer in order to end up purchasing it, so I had to have an all cash offer and significantly be very aggressive in the bidding war to significantly increase the price just in order to get a solid property. And I do not see that as being the case these days with the properties because, again, a lot of buyers are not as eager, which opens up the window to newer investors in order to get their foot in the door and start learning.
Right. So to be clear, we're comparing 2023 to 2025.
Yes, it's been 2 years.
And what's notable to me about that is that I think in the mind of a lot of beginners, those 2 years are sort of lumped together as one and the same. Because from the point of view of a beginner who is thinking about going into real estate investing, but they haven't done so yet, anything that's sort of the post-COVID era often generally feels like the same because it all sort of feels, you've got this broad paintbrush of it's expensive.
Yes.
Right? We saw home prices during the pandemic, just between 2020 to 2021, home prices nationwide increased 17%.
Yes.
And overall, I mean, if you compare prices where they were in 2018, 2019 to where they are today, right, you have year over year of cumulative increase, significant cumulative increases. And so I think for a lot of people who are not as familiar with this topic, anything that's like 2021, 2022 on, anything that's post-COVID is just sort of like in this big monolithic bucket of expensive and unattainable.
Well, that really speaks to the sentiment and what we're seeing in the media versus having a nuanced, calculated, analytical approach. So I have the same feeling wash over me, when I think about like buying a forever home, because as an investor, I am still living in like a house hacking scenario where I buy a duplex, I live in one side, fix it up, and then let the tenant on the other side help pay down my mortgage, So I'm not even at a point where I'm in the home that I want to be in. And when I look at the media and everything that's happening, it feels overwhelming. However, I think it's really important to kind of break it down and understand the different levers. So a lot of what's being reported are kind of like the more retail homes, and investor and tenant occupied properties fall under a different bucket, and they have different dynamics. They may be there may be appreciation and property value increase in a lot of areas, but that doesn't mean that will apply to every property that you look at, because again, things like deferred maintenance, things like how much does the seller want to sell? Like, are they near retirement? Like, just looking at every property and making sure you understand the story behind it and what can drive the prices is going to be so much more helpful than this general feeling of it's too much. Because so many people are feeling that is what's going to keep them out of the market, which then opens up the doors to those who will be more nuanced and thoughtful about acquisitions and the opportunities that are out there.
When people are optimistic, you'll get a lot of newbies who decide to dip their toe in the water, and that increases competition,
yes,
which sends prices up. But when people like 2025, when people are pessimistic, that competition, that especially from beginners, goes away, which means that you as a buyer have a lot more advantage.
Yes, absolutely. And it is in those times that people are willing to overpay as well. And so they will come in and be like, real estate's great, and not think about it in terms of, okay, what is my actual ROI? What am I looking to hit here versus being in the stock market? What am I looking to get out of this? And so because there are others who may be, air quotations, more experienced, but also just wanting to get into the game, that will also drive prices up, because it's like the trendy cool thing to do at that time. It is not the trendy cool thing to do to buy real estate right now, which is all the more reason to be more aware of the opportunities that could be out there.
Right. This is the time in which a person can take the contrarian position.
Absolutely. And you and I have been talking behind the scenes. There's a Warren Buffett kind of, I will not say quote because I can't quote it accurately, but his idea is that when people are scared, that is the time to buy.
Right.
And that's definitely like what I am seeing in many markets right now. You want to be able to get in with the analytical approach, to be able to recognize opportunities that are overlooked by others, because it is the others who are colored by their fear, who make investment decisions based on fear and emotion. And that is not how you want to make investment decisions.
It's be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy.
Yes, that. Exactly. Those are the words I've been looking for. Thank you.
Right. And so what you're saying is in 2025, it's a time period of a lot of fear.
Yes.
And so this is the ideal opportunity to be greedy, and by virtue of doing so, you're making bids with less competition.
Yes, absolutely. And that'll set you up for years to come.
Right. Now, how do hedge funds play a role in all of this? Because, a lot of investment home buyers are private equity, hedge funds.
Yeah.
Like a lot of it is institutional money that's going into the real estate, buy and hold real estate space.
I mean, there is a lot of money going into the space from those groups. From what I've seen, they look for different investments from like a mom and pop investor, kind of like, or like a small organization like mine, because my company it's me, So they tend to look for homes in nicer areas. Like, they are not in the property management business. They're not going to want something with a ton of deferred maintenance. They're not going to want to deal with roofs, et cetera. So what I've seen is like they're in the single family home space. They're in the nicer area. So they are not I would not say that they are taking away opportunities from mom and pop investors by any means. So I think it's mom and pop investors that are each other's kind of competition when it comes to a lot of the properties that hold the most opportunity in terms of like quicker appreciation value, due to the fact, again, that they have deferred maintenance, they have been updated in the last 5-10 years, that sort of thing.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the type of home that a mom and pop investor would be looking at, because I think that a lot of the mythology around it's too late for a beginner, or it's not realistic for anybody to get started in this field. I think a lot of that comes from people, retail home buyers, like owner-occupants, who are looking at the cost of the median home.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we heard even Cody Sanchez, when she came here and, she kind of offhandedly made this comment. She was like, well, yeah, but look at the median home price. Right? Compare the median home price to the median income. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, most of the investment properties are not at the median home price. They are much lower.
Exactly.
And so again, that goes back to like the nuanced understanding of the strategy. They are much lower, and they tend to be more in line with the arbitrage opportunity that still exists for rental income. And so in terms of what many mom and pop investors are looking for, I would say there's a lot of growth in the areas that are on the air quotations fringe. So if you have like a certain county that is doing really well, a lot of the mom and pop investors will be looking on like the fringes of that county, because when growth happens, it's going to expand and be in the path of progress. Right. Whereas the hedge funds are probably not going to want to be on the fringe, because on the fringe means that there's a little bit more risk for like the 1, 2, 3 years until the area like improves and expands and the houses get flipped and that sort of thing.
Right.
You know, and that's honestly also an opportunity, I think, to do good in the world, right? Because like hedge funds and these big companies that have large apartment complexes, they have a much less personal approach, you know, and I think that is tougher for certain demographics, you know. So I think like it can also be a two-pronged approach for an investor, you know, like until the area gets better, you can work with a different demographic, and it can be more fulfilling kind of to work with people who could use your help.
Right.
And then in the next 2-3 years, as things change, you can also reap the benefits of being in that area.
Right. So basically be the landlord you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people right now who say, well, it's just not realistic to buy anymore. Like homes are too expensive. It's 2025. Look at how much home prices have shot up, especially post-COVID. It's just, it might have been realistic 10 years ago, but it's not realistic anymore today.
Yeah, and that's very difficult for me to hear because you just said 10 years ago. I started investing 8 years ago. And even at that time, I kept hearing discouragement from anyone and everyone who wanted to share their opinion with me, saying that the market was already at its peak. It had been going up for years and things would just continue to get more expensive in terms of like repairs, taxes, et cetera. And I was essentially just going to be squeezed out, you know, of any profit, that I was making like all kinds of mistakes by investing in homes.
Right. Wait, so this is 2018 then?
Yes.
This is 8 years ago.
Yes. Or even like, I think this started in 2017 because that's when I got really serious about the property search.
Right.
And I am, even at that time, like I only had, I didn't have practical knowledge. I only had abstract theory. I didn't know anyone who had done this, you know, and I was just like, I do think this will work. Let me just try it, you know? And I'm so glad that I started, even though all I was hearing was, it's too expensive. This is not going to be good. It's only going to get worse. Like, don't get involved. Because if I hadn't gotten started then, by the time the last 2 years came around, I would not have gained that experience that I needed to really capitalize on like the last year and change. Because as I'm sitting here now saying it's a great time to buy, it's been a great time to buy. So in the last year, so I have 22 units now. In the last 13 months, I have grown my portfolio by 12 units. So it took the first like 6 years to accumulate 10 properties, which I did through creative financing, utilizing the equity I have in my properties through lines of credit, et cetera. I financed it 100% myself. And then I had enough experience and equity and relationships built, like the relationship capital for people to trust me as an operator to get another 12 doors in 13 months just based on the experience that I had.
Wow.
And like, again, I did this, like I've been working with you for several years now, you know, I did this has been my side quest for years. I've had a full-time job, you know, and so I think there's never going to be, air quotations, a great time to buy if you look at the past as the comparative sample. Because it's always going to be less expensive in the past. But if you look at the future 5 years from now, like it's not going to be as good an opportunity then as it is now.
Right.
Does that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like in the year 2030, people are going to be saying, I really regret that I didn't buy in 2025.
Yeah. And that's just looking at like property values. Forget what you could be getting back in terms of rent growth, et cetera, tax benefits. Wow. So yeah, like it's right now is always the time to buy if you have the appetite to hold real estate.
Wow. So, okay. So I want to dig into, so in the last 13 months,
yes,
you've bought 12 new units. So just to like be clear here, we're talking from, because we're recording this in March of 2025. So that means that from February of 2024?
Yeah. So I think actually it might have been mid-January 2024.
Mid-January.
Yes.
Yeah. So from and your last acquisition I know was at the end of January of 2025.
Yes.
So basically from January 2024 through the end of January 2025.
Yeah.
Right? You got 13.
That's insane.
That is so insane.
Like, okay, so like, let me just put this into context, because even like, as I'm hearing this come from your mouth now, I'm almost disassociating a little bit, because when I first started investing, there were all these stories of people who'd be like, scale, like 12 months, 27 units. And I'd be like, you guys are out of your mind. I will never be them. I am not you. Like, this is not doable. Like, stop. Like, let's just stop with the nonsense, you know? So like, even when you're saying that, I'm like, oh my God, do I sound like those people? I don't mean to be, I'm so sorry. But yeah, and that was just due to like the relationships built. It takes time. Like, I did not do that in the first year. And again, like, that was from not money that I even had, you know, it was just by being a really good operator for so many years and having people and banks essentially trust me. So like, when I think about that, like that person who scales that quickly, I really feel like that's not me. I feel like I resonate more with like the investor who is still looking to buy their second or third property, because that was me for so long. Like, you know, a little bit of my background, like things look great now, but like it took me a long time to get here. Like, I was a sixth grade dropout. You know, I went to community college for a year before talking my way into like a good undergrad. And like, I started investing and learning about investing when I was trying to put myself through grad school. So like, I had no money and I was still working full time. And so if you just look at this last year, yeah, this does not seem doable, but it is actually much more achievable if you give yourself a long time range and just go like one thing at a time, one property at a time, try to figure out how to get that one, maximize that. Okay, then maybe in like a year or two, just get one more, you know? And then over time, it adds up to the point where you can be this person, if that is what you want, who can buy multiple properties. But it takes time, and that is not where anybody starts.
Right.
And if they do, I am scared for them. We don't want to be them. Like, that's a lot of leverage, a lot of debt. I don't know that I would promote that as the path.
Right. Well, you know, what this reminds me of is that saying that it takes 10 years to get to overnight success.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's because what people often don't see are the 10 years of learning, of trying, of struggle, of doubt, right? The 10 years of like very, very incremental progress. Anything, as Sahil Bloom says, anything over zero compounds. It's just that sometimes in the beginning, you're just barely over zero. So the compounding is happening, but it's just happening very slowly.
But it's still happening.
But it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with compounding is it's that, you know, after a lot of compounding, it's that last doubling that looks really impressive that from the outside world.
And it's literally the last doubling in the story, like with my story that we're talking about within the last year, because my portfolio doubled in the last year. But it took so long to get there. But again, like back to like the topic and kind of like the initial set of questions, you have to get started. And it doesn't matter what people are saying, whether it's a good time or a bad time, there are always opportunities to be found.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I hear when I hear your story is from 2018 through the beginning of 2024, it took you 6 years to get, and really you started in 2017 in terms of like your learning, like deep.
Oh, I started learning in 2016. It took me 2 years because grad school. I was in grad school, and I was paying for that and trying to save money. And yeah, I had to learn for 2 years before I had anything saved up for my first property.
Oh, okay. So
and I was living in Boston. Like I invested in Indiana, you know, and to buy a property in Indiana, it took me like 2 years to get a little tiny place. But
to buy out of state. Yeah. Okay, so 2016, you start like deeply learning, like absorbing yourself in material, learning material. 2017, you start aggressively searching.
End of 2017.
End of 2017. You're living in Boston at the time. And so you're searching in Indianapolis.
Yes. And even then I was like, none of these numbers make sense, which I think is just like, that is like par for the course whenever you get started and you don't know fully what you're looking at. Because I like had spreadsheets and was like, this address, none of the returns pencil out. And I was just like, what is wrong? What am I doing wrong? And the answer was I wasn't doing anything wrong. It's just that I didn't know yet which properties to look at, which areas, and what the full picture looked like. And there's the understanding that the vast majority of properties are not investment worthy to begin with. So it's fine. So if you're kind of like new and you're like trying to pick out houses, almost like throwing darts at a map and running the numbers and they don't work out, that's okay. That's normal. You'll figure it out in time. You just have to keep going and keep learning.
Yeah. Well, it's like, all right, the vast majority of people out there are not marriage material. Right? But we are. But you keep searching, right?
Yes.
And so, similarly, the vast majority of properties are not worth buying as an investment.
Yes, absolutely. And they're not meant to be investments. They're just learning experiences, and you keep going and you'll figure it out. And it just gets so much easier. Like if you want, that's my one thing. If you want to be in investments, in real estate investments, and it's hard right now, that is fine. Just keep going. Like now it took so much in the first year to figure out what to look at, and I would have to run all of this on a spreadsheet, blah, blah, blah. And now someone sends me a Zillow listing, I can look at the number, look at the area, and immediately be like, yes, no, 5 minutes. Wow. Because I already know what insurance is, I know what taxes are, I know what rent is because I've been doing it. And so it gets so much easier. It does not take the amount of legwork later on to be able to execute and find properties and then execute.
Right. Yeah, which makes sense. The longer you do something, the more expertise you have. And Malcolm Gladwell writes about this in the book Blink, once you develop a lot of expertise in an area, then you would end up developing just an instinct for it. And what's truly happening is that your subconscious mind can make just very, very rapid calculations, faster than you even realize.
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%.
So... so 2016 you're deeply learning, 2017 you began searching, and then 2018 through the beginning of 2024, that's when you build the first 10 properties.
Yeah.
So that's when you get your first. So in that 6-year time frame, or really we can expand that to an 8-year time frame, you get your first 10 properties. So it takes 8 years to get 10 doors.
And I think at least half or more than half of those doors were house hacks because I couldn't afford to just buy a property. And so I had to get into it as an owner occupant with the low down payment, 3 to 7%, pay off PMI really early, just to get in there to accumulate.
Right.
I literally moved to Indiana to do this.
Wow.
I left Boston. I love Boston. I love being on the East Coast. But yeah, I moved to India just to do that. And then it all kind of came together last year.
Wow. All right. Yeah. And then so it took that long, and it just reminds me of a compounding interest chart. It took 8 years to build the first 10 doors, and then in the last year you built 13 more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in this year, in 2025, you got 8 doors.
Yep. One fell swoop. Yeah.
Wow. Tell us about then that 8-unit property, because I think a lot of people who think, well, 2025, it's too expensive, you can't invest anymore. We're in the post-COVID era now. It's a new world.
I mean, it is a new world, but it's always a new world. Times are constantly changing. Interest rates are always changing. Economic outlooks are always changing. That's the one constant that we have. And again, I believe it's a great time to buy, to the point where I am now, I don't do partnerships, but I have had a few private lenders, and I've actually started to reach out to them again because I see so many opportunities that I'm I can't let all of this go by. I need to figure out a way to raise capital. And so there's, like I said, there's just a lot less competition. And so what I can see is that the final price that I'm going to be paying for properties is actually going to be lower than what I would have paid a few years ago, because I don't have to get into bidding wars anymore. I don't have to get into bidding wars. I don't have to pull on all of my lines of credit to be that cash buyer again. So I can get better financing by getting financing upfront versus the higher HELOC rate and that sort of thing. And I just, it's a really great time to get into the market, but you just have to make sure that you're taking into account the additional costs that are no longer the case. Now, someone might be asking for 220, but you can go for a duplex, but you can go in and actually get it for that 220 versus it being bid up to 260, 270 2 or 3 years ago. So those are, again, like the very important things to keep in mind.
Okay, so let's just walk through a hypothetical here, right? So let's say I'm based on the East Coast, based in New York City. I do have one duplex in Indianapolis. Let's say I wanted to get a second one, right? The duplex that I bought in Indianapolis, I got also in the post-COVID era. So when everyone, after the big COVID run up in prices. But, that was like 3 years ago. So let's say I want to get one in 2025. I'm not willing to move there. I'm not willing to house hack. It's got to be from a distance. Yeah. What would I do?
I would start to get to know the areas.
Okay.
And make friends in the area. In the area that you want to invest in. There's all kinds of...
You're my friend. Done.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
And so there's different Facebook groups that you can use for resources to learn about the areas wherever you'd want to invest. And that is the first thing that I would do, because that will show you the risk of investing in specific areas, and you can match that to your own risk tolerance.
Right.
Personally, like, I don't like investing in like super urban areas unless there is significant investment from the city being dumped into that area to improve it. So when I started investing right outside like the really good school districts, even though everybody else was in the more urban areas, because projected cash flow was high, because back then you could get a duplex for like 120K and then rent each side for $800 each. And like on paper you look so smart, but like it was just very, very difficult. So I think as a long distance investor, I would want to get into the better areas, and there's also more appreciation in those areas. So I would choose the areas that match my level of risk tolerance.
Okay.
So that would be absolute step number one. And then I would start learning what the price points are, what drives people to those areas, and what the rent points are for them, so that you can learn what is normal and what is abnormal, both in terms of what is too expensive and what is a good deal. So those are the two big steps I take first to really develop a solid education.
Okay. What avenues would you recommend for a long distance investor who does not have the benefit of house hacking?
I think you really have to look at your resources and different strategies. A lot of people talk about burring. I personally love burring, but I love burring at this point of my journey, of my real estate career, when I have a solid grasp on the numbers. I have techs, contractors that I can really trust, who will go in quickly and who will prioritize me. Sorry, let me rewind. Burring. That stands for like, you buy the property, you renovate it, you rent it out, you refinance it, and then you repeat it. So essentially that the theory there is that you can buy properties with zero cash left in the deal, and whatever capital you have and resources you have, you can recycle from one property to the next while keeping the asset.
Right.
So that's really attractive, and that's something that I do now. That's what's part of what's allowed me to scale. However, as an early investor, I would at the very beginning, I would stick to a more conventional path. Save up enough for the down payment, have enough for your capital and reserves, have enough for the oh no fund, the rainy day fund, and just follow it very conservatively until you get good and really confident with it. And you have the experience to back up your confidence in how you feel, because you've done it a couple times.
Right. Because with burring, in the way that you describe it, my thought is, all right, where does that initial capital come from? And then when you dig into burring, a big part of the assumptions around it are that you're acquiring the property for 70% less than what's known as the after repair value.
Yes.
Which is the value, what it would be valued at after you've done all of your repairs.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have the skill to buy it at 70% ARV.
Or honestly, even less, because a lot of those you're going to need to put money in to fix it. Like maybe the foundation needs fixing or the roof needs a replacement. So after you spend all that money, you still want to be like 70 to 80% of the total value.
Right. Which is, it's clearly doable given that literally tens of thousands of people have done it, but it does take quite a bit of skill to be able to know how to choose the right property.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It's hard. It's still hard for me when I look at something and I'm like, oof. Like, is that really going to pencil out to the correct after repair value? Are my repair bids actually going to come in or like that? Or is it going to be a lot more expensive once the project starts and we get into the walls or what have you?
Right. Okay, so then you would recommend that for a beginner,
keep it simple.
Save for the down payment.
Yes, and think about it in terms of the long term, because at the very beginning, your cash flow might not be great. And it can be really disappointing to be like, oh, I need a new HVAC. There goes X number of months of profit. But if you look at it over a 30-year term where you have a tenant consistently paying your mortgage down, giving you a little bit of money, like in terms of cash at the beginning, cash flow, you get the tax benefits and the property appreciates. After 5 or 6 years, you're going to start looking a lot smarter than you did in year one.
Yeah.
And then in year 10, you look like a genius, you know?
Right.
So it takes time. It's so worth it, but it takes time.
Right. Suni, you've been the course administrator for your first rental property since 2021, December of 2021. What were some of the fears, the hesitations, the doubts that people had about real estate in 2021 and 2022? And have you seen any changes now that we're in 2025? No, they're all the same?
They are the same.
Wow.
They are the same, and they are honestly some of the same ones that I grappled with when I was starting. And they're very much around the fact that people are worried that they've missed the boat. That is one of the biggest things. Like, can I still buy real estate and do well? And then, so it kind of can be broken down. The question that I get can be broken down into two kind of buckets. One is the external environment of real estate investing. Does it still fit? And can I do this? And there are assessments both in terms of what do I need to do to make this work in the environment that we are in, and how does this fit into my life? And both are very, very important things to assess, because a lot of people don't have much time. Everyone, like, people have jobs, at least one. A lot of people have families alongside the jobs, and so there's very little time left to start what is a hybrid between investing and a new business.
Right.
And so it is understanding and working through those situations. And once the time commitment at the beginning can be daunting when you're learning. And that is kind of like the biggest thing, but like, you can take your time to learn it. Like, I took 2 years, you can take as many years as you want, but as long as you keep learning and keep applying it and looking for ways to apply it over time, it can drastically diminish. So like, before buying my first property, it took more than 2 years for me to figure it out, build the contacts, build the network that I needed. And then last January in 2024, between finding a property that was mailed to me through a wholesaler and closing on it, it was like 36 hours, and it took me like 15 minutes of sending texts to my banker, my inspector, like my various contacts to get everything set up and close on the deal, to get under contract, I should say, and just move forward with it. So like that window drastically diminishes. You just have to kind of get started as long as it is the right fit for you and you're on a financially sound platform, like you have built for yourself, like emergency fund for yourself, and you have like your savings and everything else that you need, because this is this investment that you use discretionary income to build.
Right.
So.
Right. It's interesting to me that the fears, the hesitations, the doubts have not changed, even because the economy between 2021 and 2025.
So many changes.
Right?
It's not the same world.
Yeah, the economy has changed so dramatically.
Yeah.
But I like what you said about, and I want to dig into this a little bit further, the two categories of hesitations. One is the external category of, is this economy is this the right economy?
Yes.
Are these the right economic circumstances?
Am I too late?
Yeah. Am I too late?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this even worth it anymore? Can we even do this?
Yeah. Am I too late? So that's the external. And then, am I enough? Is the internal.
Oh my God, that resonates. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Am I too late? And am I enough?
Yes.
Those are the fears.
Yeah, absolutely.
From our students inside of Your First Rental Property, has one of those two, the external or the internal, been more dominant than the other, or is it about equally weighted?
Pretty close to equally weighted, but I think the am I enough bucket is a little bit heavier. There are a few more people that need to want to talk through their situation to understand if this can work for them, if they are in the right place, if this is the right time for them. With all of the responsibilities that they have, both in terms of time and financial constraints. So there is also a lot of I won't be ready to buy for another year or two. Should I start the course now? I've been wanting to buy real estate for 10 years and this, that, or the other keeps getting in the way. Do you think that I can move more slowly and still accomplish what I need to accomplish? That sort of thing. And so I think that weighs a little bit more heavily. And also with a lot of people having families and real estate investing still being an abstract theory that they believe in, but without practical application and experience, it can be heavy. It can be scary to be like, okay, I could save this $100,000 and either put it in a 529 for my kids' college, or I could put it in this house 4 states away.
Right.
So it is a very difficult decision for many, and rightfully so.
One of the things that I often tell friends who are having kids is that if you want to save for a child's college, when they're born or when they're under the age of 5, buy a property with a 15-year mortgage.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Yeah. Buy a rental property with a 15-year mortgage. And if you do it when the kid is age 5 or under, or ideally age 3 or under,
it'll be paid off by the time they're 18.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they'll have that income to go to college, to start a new business. They can learn about business as they're getting older and age appropriate, learn about cash flow, et cetera. And
exactly.
Yeah, it can be a great tool to get ahead, which is really important in these times where inflation and cost of living are all outpacing the increase in wages.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and what's great about that strategy is if that home is paid off when they're college age, it's your decision. You'll be cash flowing really well because the home is paid off. So you can use that monthly cash flow to cover college costs, or you can sell the home and then just have a big lump sum.
Yeah.
And you don't have to make that decision now. You can look at the circumstances at the time the kid is in college and make that choice.
Yeah.
And the reason that I say 5 is because a lot of my friends will say, like, oh, well, my kid is 4, am I too late, right? Like, because I used to say, oh, do it when the kid is 3 or under, right? And then people would be like, oh, my kid's 4.5, I'm too late, right? Like, it's so tempting to want to believe that you're too late.
Yeah.
But like, heck, even if you did it when the child is 7, like you can take out, if you took out student loans during the duration of college, then assuming the kid goes to a 4-year undergrad program, if you buy that home when the kid is 7 and it's paid in full, free and clear when the child is 22, well, great. Now, at the time that the child graduates from college, which is when interest from student loans starts accruing,
yes,
right? Cool. Now you can sell off that home and pay everything back in a big lump sum, right? Exactly on the graduation day.
Yeah, and also like homeownership in general is getting to be harder, like a harder and harder milestone to hit.
Right.
And so being able to gift that to your child, because who knows what the homeownership landscape is going to be like in 20 years. So even if they're 5, 6, if they're 10, who cares?
Right. Yeah.
If it can be done at some point, it's going to be a tremendous boon to their future.
Right. Exactly. I think what that requires is a bit of creative thinking, because we're taught in this very linear way, like college savings equals 529 plan, right?
Yeah.
And so it can be very easy to compartmentalize and think like,
there's only one way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Real estate, an investment property provides a great deal of flexibility with that. There you can use the cash flow. You can do so many things with that. That may be more flexible than a 529 plan,
right.
Maybe, because we don't know what the future holds and changes, et cetera. So, yeah.
Yeah. What kind of price points? So now in 2025, like in the Indianapolis or greater Indianapolis market, or we can even, I don't know how much you know of Indiana in general, but we can expand this to the markets that you're familiar with. What kind of price points are we talking about for we'll say a class B, B plus duplex or fourplex?
Yeah, fourplexes are challenging in my market. There isn't that much inventory for them. Duplexes are kind of where it's at in my market. And for like a solid class B, maybe that one that probably has like 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, we're probably talking about on each side, probably about $230K.
Nice.
Yeah. And that will differ based upon how many bedrooms and bathrooms and the overall size. Like there are 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom each side, you can get probably for like 200. That would be in decent areas. And if you're looking for like more bathroom space, it will be 250 to maybe 80 depending on the area. Yeah,
that sounds very reasonable.
Yeah, and
right?
like I think so. One of the ways that I've gotten ahead that like I would really encourage like new investors to look at is when they choose an area to see what air quotations normal builds are in that area. So why I say that is because in my area, I've learned that many of the duplexes that were built with 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. However, families tend to outgrow bathrooms first. And so in order to increase not only rent, but longevity of the tenants that you place, having an extra bathroom helps so much. And so by adding a bathroom, I've learned in my market that might be $7,000, but I can increase the property value by like 20 grand at minimum, depending on the area. And then I have the rent that increases as well. And so that's kind of what I look for. So when there is an investor going into a certain market, I would always say, like, get to know what is being built in your area and what has been built so that you can identify these areas of opportunity for property appreciation, forcing the price point of the property as well as increasing rents.
And I think that's a great example of seeing a property not as it is, but as it could be.
Yes.
Which is something that we talk about inside of YFRP a lot. Because, again, that standard linear thinking is, well, you just buy the median home and tie a nice ribbon on it, end of story, we're done.
And here you go, rent it out.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
done.
And it takes a bit of creativity to see untapped potential within a home.
Yes.
Right?
And I mean, that really comes down to like one of the core principles of investing is to be able to see what others can't, see the potential. Like even when it comes to, it's not as much the case with index funds, which is what like we promote more, like the VTS, SAX and stuff. But like when it comes to like a stock or a company and you look at that, you're like, okay, so what is it? Is this an undervalued asset that I can then buy and like hold on to? Real estate investing is the same. Is this undervalued? Right. Can I do something to increase the value of it?
Right. And well, with entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if you get to know a market really well and you discover that there's some type of inefficiency or opportunity in a very niche market segment, that there are not enough socks available for people with very, very tiny or large feet, right? Like, I don't know. I've never studied the sock market, but maybe that's an opportunity. Like maybe you have an extreme foot size in one direction or the other, and you've just always had trouble finding really good socks. And like, all right, there is a niche segment of the market that probably has the same problem as you, and so that's where you discover your market opportunity. Or you think about some just more efficient way to manufacture socks, or some really creative way to position and market and brand them, right? Like there are all of these ways that you can infuse vision and innovation and creativity, and do something a little bit differently.
Yes.
And that's where the value comes from. And real estate is no different.
Yes. And that also goes along with the renting of the property. Like right now, we're just talking about seeing the vision in potentially what like the layout could be. But that also goes with how you end up renting out. Like people are like, okay, I'm only going to long term. Okay, I'm only going to short term. Okay, I'm only going to medium term. And there was like one property in general, I had no idea what I was going to do with it. So like my initial plan was to long term, but then I had a friend who wanted to Airbnb it, so she rented it from me to arbitrage it. Then she decided she didn't want to do it anymore and got out of the lease, and I was stuck with this fully furnished house that I did not want furnished at all because it was not in the area to be furnished. And I tried to tell her, but she wanted to do it, and I was just like, okay. And so then I'm stuck with all of these like beds and stuff, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now? And so like I started kind of networking with like insurance companies, relocation companies to figure out what their needs were so that I could get like a medium/long-term tenant in the form of people who maybe had like who were just moving to the area. There were a couple of families whose homes had burned down, and needed a place to live that was fully furnished, in the interim while the house is being rebuilt. So there's always strange and different opportunities that can come up once you have the asset, and that's a part of real estate investing is just being like, I have this, let's figure it out.
Wow, that's a great example, right? Like it would never occur to me to reach out to a relocation company.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the medium term market it's this big untapped market. Like Airbnb makes it became oversaturated because it's as easy as putting photos on an app.
Low barrier to entry.
Exactly. Exactly. And so of course it becomes oversaturated because everyone and their cousin Billy is doing
Billy is doing it now. Yes.
Cousin Billy is doing it.
And Cousin Billy has a house where he doesn't need to hit maybe a certain like return, so he can price it super low.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're competing with that low price. And then it's a lot of like, I like Airbnb, but at the same time there are drawbacks, And it's then like a race to the bottom to see who can price the lowest. And then it's kind of like, well, now I need a golf simulator to raise the price back up. Like,
right. But with the medium term, like the corporate rentals, traveling nurses, a lot of traveling nurses. They need a place to live for 3 months.
Yeah.
Right.
And they need it furnished. They generally like treat the place pretty well, etc. So it's being open to whatever can come your way and trying to think creatively can really go very far.
Yeah.
With this.
I know around hospitals there are often places for mid-length stays. Like if you have a family member who's in a hospital and you need something, you're going to be there for maybe a month.
Yeah.
Right? You need something for about that length of time. You want to get out of a hotel. Like there are a lot of hotels in your hospitals as well, but like you don't want to be in a hotel for a month or a month and a half. So there's a lot of demand there, and you can respond to that need.
Yeah, there are demands for all kinds of things. I've been to medium-term and short-term rental conferences where there are like niches growing with like assisted living, and not just due to age, but also due to disability, and because they are looking for very specific homes. Like they don't want 2-story homes, because they want everyone on the first floor kind of thing. And if you have like maybe, or the ability to build a ramp versus steps into the home, that can make you very attractive to those looking for an assisted living kind of space. So there's all kinds of ways to monetize a home that you might have purchased.
Right. Will you tell us about Burton's Bungalow?
Which part is the question?
About the concept of it.
Okay, we will stick to the concept.
The decoration.
Okay.
For those of you wondering why we're laughing,
yes.
I guess we'll answer that in a moment.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Yes. So Burton's Bungalow is my baby. It was a home that I lived in, a duplex that I house hacked, that I then turned into an Airbnb. It is the only home that is not a very small Airbnb that is catered to like solo travelers and people coming through for work. In short, this is like actually a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home.
The only one of your homes.
Yes, only one of my homes. And so I really like to do things differently. I hate like going along with the crowd. And so I just saw this space in Airbnb where everyone was decorating their place in agreeable gray, which is the paint color. And I was just like, I feel like I'm gonna lose my mind if I look at another listing like this. And so I just really wanted something that people could like experience, when they stepped into it. I wanted something unique. And I've always loved Tim Burton movies for some reason. Like as soon as it starts, I'm like, ooh, I can feel it. It feels good. And so I decorated an Airbnb with the Nightmare Before Christmas theme in Indianapolis. And it's complete with a light show in the living room every night, 7:30 to 8 p.m., like Christmas lights from the ceiling, Christmas trees. There is a 6-foot tall Jack Skellington in the corner. Like this thing was, there are like little skulls and skeletons like all over the house. And like even a Halloween town like cityscape on all the walls of the living room that people can sign, so that's kind of, that's been my baby. I've hosted a lot of families, people coming through for like weddings, etc., who just wanted a unique stay. And it's been so fun. I've loved it so much.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm guessing probably pre-Halloween, and also then if it's Nightmare Before Christmas, pre-Halloween and pre-Christmas.
Yeah, Thanksgiving to Christmas are like just packed, and it's just so cool because like I feel people get sentimental in the space too. And then even if their kids sometimes don't understand fully like Nightmare Before Christmas, they see like the skeleton and then they see the lights at night and have pictures of all these kids just like looking around going, oh my God. And that just makes like it makes me really happy. I have a lot of messages with people going, this was like a core memory for us, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, thank you. So yeah.
And to those of you who are wondering why we started laughing when I asked her that question, it's because you've also discovered that it can be a party destination, and so
it's been a little bit challenging. Some of the details, I am having to take someone to court, and so I am unable to share all of the details at this moment. But last year was one of like the toughest points in my journey as a real estate investor because an adult booked the place and then handed it over to her niece, who is a minor, who then had been advertising throughout her high school for her birthday party. And it turned into a 300-person house party in this house. And it got very, very out of hand. I have security monitors, I have noise detectors, and they disabled all of them. And so, like, when I went to sleep that night, I saw it was starting to get noisy. But sometimes that can happen if there's like 6 or 7 people in there and they're just being a little rowdy. So, like, I sent them a message and I was like, yeah, my noise detectors are going off. Please know that you're in a quiet residential neighborhood. The home itself has shared walls. So, like, please be cognizant of that. It's in the house rules. And they're like, yeah, it's fine. And so then I got a call from a neighbor at 2 a.m. going, I think you need to get over here. Yeah. And so, yeah. It was one of the most challenging times where I was like, I might be in the wrong space, but as I've learned, there are downsides. There are always downsides with being a real estate investor. Sometimes these things just happen, and you have to have insurance and you have to have as many precautionary measures, and also building what I learned in the aftermath of that. What I wish I had done before is build stronger relationships with the neighbors. I was very lucky in that my neighbors were so lovely. I knew a few of them because I'd lived in that house, but I didn't know all of them very well. And since then, like, they have been super supportive, and they've also looked out for me and my property since, like, I took the time to talk to them after that. I was like, I'm really sorry about what happened. This is what I am doing. I do not want to bring a party scene into our neighborhood. I love this neighborhood just as much as you do. This is absolutely not what I want in my life or in yours, and I wish I had been preemptive about letting them know about my plans and introducing myself as a neighbor who also cared about the community. So that is probably the one thing that I would go back and change had I had the foresight.
Wow.
Because there's a lot of, I think the reason I was scared to do something like that, or I really wouldn't have given it much credence, is because there's a lot of anti-rental sentiment, whether it's short-term rentals, long-term rentals. Like, residents don't really want that in their neighborhood. There's like, not in my neighborhood kind of feel. But I think that is because they don't feel seen and they don't feel protected and they don't feel heard. So if you are having people in and out of a home and that's going to affect them, I think it's better to get in front of it and be like, listen, like, I want to do this, but I am on your side. I love the space. Like, here's my number. Call me anytime, day or night, and I will take care of it if anything comes up, and actually, like, legitimately mean it and be there for them. And that is the one thing that I would have done differently.
Wow. That's really beautiful.
I wish I had that beautiful thinking 3 years ago.
But it's really beautiful. But because when you talk about Burton's Bungalow, you smile. Like, despite the fact that, like, you had this experience, this high school party with 300 people, right? Like that. Wow. But, like, in spite of that, you still smile when you talk about it. I believe in doing something and building a business that also brings joy and helps others. And I know it has before and after that. So, yeah. You smile when you talk about it. You smile when you talk about the impact that it's had on people. And even the tough experience really brought you closer to the community.
Yeah, it really did. Like, my faith in humanity was for a little bit just shot, when like my neighbors were like, my windows were kicked out. There were kids sitting on the roof of my house. Like, but when the police were called, they busted through windows to like escape, ruin neighbors' property. Like, it was like out of a movie. But having so much support, like, I was probably after I saw that, I was probably more scared of the neighbors, like, because if that happened in my neck of the woods, I would be livid. I'd be like, who are you? What are you doing? Are you screening these people? I personally screen everybody. But they were just so wonderful and supportive, that I was like, okay, like, anything can be weathered if you build the right relationships with the right people, which was I always believed in that. Like, I always believe that real estate is about people, not properties, but that really kind of drove that home even more.
That's a beautiful saying. Real estate is about people, not properties.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
And it's so true. It's about the neighbors. It's about the team that you build. It's about the relationships that you make with your tenants over time.
Yeah.
And
It's
with
almost like friendships all over the place. Like,
contractors.
Yeah.
One of my contractors that I've worked with a lot, he's based in Atlanta, and of course I live in New York, right? So it's a long distance relationship, but he's just worked with me for so many years, and the last time that I went to Atlanta, we got lunch together, and
oh, I love that.
He was telling me all about his retirement plans. He's putting, based on his age, way too much money into crypto. So I tried to talk him out of that. Way too much. He's very much in the nothing can go wrong phase of crypto investing. Yeah. But that's the type of relationship that we have.
Yeah. And so that's one thing that I really like about real estate as well, is because in so many parts of life, you don't get to choose who you work with.
Yeah.
Like in my corporate life, before I started working with you, there were like so many people where I was like, get me out of here. Like, do I have to talk to that person today? I guess I do. But with real estate, like, you can choose the people that you want to work with, and that makes it a lot better. Like, you can choose the people that you have rapport, you like, and you get along with, and that makes life so much better, so it really is about the relationships, but you can, like, it's the one place where you can choose your relationships to a greater degree,
right,
professionally.
Tell me about your future plans for real estate. You just bought an 8-unit, which you closed on January 31st, 2025. Is it fully occupied? Is it, what's the status of the 8-unit?
It is fully occupied. I'm lucky in that the previous landlord completed reno on 7 of the 8 units within the last 5 years, and all major systems have been replaced, which is unheard of. I know from your sigh of relief, you totally understand that. So it's pretty much updated. I'll have to renovate 1 unit at some point within the next year, but right now I'm just building the relationships, making sure the tenants know who I am, that they can work with me, and stabilizing it from that perspective. And as far, it's just really funny because now, after it's stabilized, I'm thinking about what are next steps. And as someone who hasn't been in the commercial residential space, I'm like, does this mean I go back to duplexes? And I don't really know yet, but there are so few opportunities that are good in the commercial space that I feel like continuing to kind of build on the air quotation smaller units is still going to be the way to go for me. And for a long time, I never even saw myself having 22 units. I was like, keep it small, take it all. Just keep it small, keep the headaches minimal, and just keep it going like that. And that was my entire goal. But I will say, now that there's a certain tipping point after I have it might have been after 8 or 9 units where life got dramatically easier, because I had enough respect from the techs and the contractors to where they would help me, and I had templates and things in place for different situations with different tenants. And so now I feel I think I would like to continue to grow after I get this 8-plex settled, just because it feels much easier and it feels a lot more fun than the first 8 or 9 units, know?
Makes sense. The more you do anything, the easier it gets.
Yeah. And then you also like we were talking about before with some of the challenges, you develop thicker skin, and the problems that felt like massive problems before just aren't anymore because you've dealt with it so many times.
I heard a property manager say once, the property manager was like, the difference between a client who's a first time real estate investor versus a client who has 20 or 30 properties and they've been doing this for a long time. The first time real estate investor is
they want to know everything.
They want to know everything. They're hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
And they're my more experienced clients are If it burns down, then call me, I guess.
Yeah. And the same thing goes through the purchasing process because before I'd want to run the numbers and know like very specifically how much it would cost. And now I'm like, it's still standing, right? Okay, so it's going to be another $1,000. Fine.
Yeah.
Like it's going to work out great in the long term. It's fine. Like I am not going to like in the short term, it might be a little bit stressful to pay a couple extra bills, but like in the long term, it works out so well that I'm just like, is it still mine? Everything else will be taken care of. It's okay.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
that's the beauty of a long-term strategy too, is like time. Once you take any small unexpected cost and amortize it out over time,
yeah.
you know, it's nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is
agreed.
Yeah, which is not a benefit that you have if you're flipping homes. If you're
Correct.
flipping homes, like an unexpected $5,000 expense can derail the flip.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, time is unforgiving on flips.
1,000%.
And
yes.
very forgiving for rentals.
Yes.
That's why I like them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so future acquisitions then.
Yeah.
So you're
I love the single families, the duplexes, like tried and true. You can do them again and again, have kind of like a system for it, build it out and be golden. Like it was the single families and the duplexes that got me to the point where I could get a commercial deal. So that's just kind of what I'm going to continue to keep doing. And the nice thing is that as your portfolio grows, you can be a little bit more specific with exactly what you want. So now I don't want properties with as much deferred maintenance because I've got others that are just fine and doing great. You know, I'm not as like willing to take on the higher risk and the potential higher headaches, you know? So I hope to keep growing, but like you said, or like we were talking about earlier, like after there's a certain tipping point, I want to make sure it's fun and easier than it has been in the past.
Right. And you know, we talked earlier about the fact that so many people, beginners especially, are not competitive right now. So it's easier to buy new properties because the contrarian position of be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. How long do you expect that to last, and will your strategy shift if there's more buyer competition? Like if people get excited about buying again.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you how long it would last. Then I would be able to I would adjust my own strategy accordingly. I mean, there's no way to know, right? But all we know is like the long-term strategy works and if fear doesn't go away overnight. So if for the next 6 months there's still like uncertainty, then you kind of just keep working with what you got. You just have to make the best step with the information that you have now and the environment that you have. That's all that you can do. So that's what I will continue to keep doing, is continue to evaluate, try to figure out what the next 6 to 8 months might look like and make the best decision at that point.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for chatting with us.
Thank you for having me.